Today we're interviewing an absolute rock star, and he's one of the best kept secrets on YouTube so far as he continues his ascent. But we're going to be talking to a cybersecurity professional by the name of John Breath. John Breath has a YouTube channel. He's got a Twitter. Be sure to give him a follow on these platforms. There are links down below. His channel is called CYBERINSIGHT. He talks a little bit about cybersecurity fundamentals, kind of like our channel, but he also dives into some of the more technical sides on like how to build secure networks. I mean, a really cool channel. But before we get into that, like this video if it's helpful, comment down below if this was helpful to you, and then of course subscribe for more content. Let's get into it. Alrighty, so for everybody that is not familiar with your channel, do you mind just giving a quick intro about yourself, your career,
Sure.
and your background?
Yep. So my name is John Breath. You might know me from Twitter as jbizzle703, and I also have a YouTube channel called CyberInsight. Pretty much what I do there on that channel is provide introductory level networking, IT, and cybersecurity information, both from a technical perspective, and then we talk about different types of career information, educational information that kind of will help people along and get into the field and make the most out of that type of career. Personally, I have a background in network engineering. I've worked for, well, started off in the Air Force, worked for some consulting companies, tier one ISP, and then I started my own company, and I kind of do IT and cyber architecture work currently.
Sweet. So, and I kind of want to get an idea about your time in the Air Force.
Sure.
I kind of get the impression you started kind of in like the signals kind of area, like at least in the armies, like we call it
Yeah,
signals. I
you
don't
guys
know.
call it signals, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I figured it was uniform across. So, how important was that towards kind of getting that base set up? Getting kind of any certifications that they'd pay for,
Mhm.
and really getting a foothold in the industry.
So it kind of was interesting because I didn't have any desire to do IT, and I didn't have any background in IT, in like high school and as a kid and stuff like that. And it was kind of just coming from a state, Maine, in New England, where there isn't a lot of job opportunity. I wasn't quite sure what I was doing, didn't have a lot of direction. So I joined the Air Force, and it kind of was one of those things where I just lucked into a career field because I scored well enough on the ASVAB test, right? So they're like, yeah, you can pretty much do anything. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, this job sounds kind of cool. So that was kind of like what pushed me in that direction, even though it wasn't intentional, right? There wasn't any, growing up and having a whole bunch of, motherboards and, coding from the age of 10 and stuff like that. That wasn't it. Um, but once I got into the Air Force, the specific job was called tech control. So it's like long haul telecommunications. And the foundational information that you learn with that was kind of, you know, uh, I want to say network plus type of stuff, right? Um, Much more dealing with circuits than dealing with routers, switches, firewalls at my first job location. I mean, it literally was a patch facility, right? So data and voice circuits, working with DISA, stuff like that. But within that time period, those first 3 years, to your point, there was a lot of opportunity for different types of training, both commercial and then within the Air Force as well. And that's kind of what started to push me more towards getting into the networking side of things, just because that seemed to be a bit more interesting than, digital and analog circuits. So with that, ended up, taking a bunch of Cisco courses, started taking college courses at the same time. And kind of the natural progression of that was, okay, well, I think you start with your Network Plus. Okay, do that, do Security Plus, CCNA. And as all those things were happening, and I was going to school full time and working full time, I got asked to go and move into a shop, which was kind of a special duty type of thing within the squadron I was working in supporting the communications for Air Force One and the rest of the Special Air Missions VIP fleet of aircraft. And that was completely network centric, like no more circuits and stuff like that. It was all switches, routers, firewalls, some SATCOM stuff. But that was kind of my impetus and push into that.
That's sick. That's
Yeah.
really cool. So, I mean, a lot of it seems like you really started in like the signals networking side of the house, and then that obviously ties in just naturally into some cybersecurity stuff by
For sure.
nature. I mean, it kind of
Yeah, yeah.
has to be.
Yep.
So, how important was it for you to kind of start on that networking side of the house before kind of really, diving into the security world,
Yeah.
just to get that foundation up?
Sure. So I think it's a few things, and I'm biased in this when I say this, obviously, because coming from a networking background. But my feeling is you really have to have that fundamental knowledge of the networking side of things to be efficient as somebody working in cybersecurity. And maybe not so much if you're working, on the GRC side, you might not need to be like that deep into it. But if you're doing blue team or red team type of stuff, um, you know, if you're attacking or defending the network, you need to understand how the network works, right? And not necessarily that doesn't mean you need to go get like a CCMP or anything like that, but understanding the basic learning objectives that would be covered, in a network plus or something like that, um, you know, really is going to make your career, at least starting off, be a lot smoother than kind of having these large knowledge gaps of, okay, well, I don't know how to subnet, and I'm looking at, an output from Wireshark, and I don't know, what subnet that IP address is in because I don't know how to do stuff with subnet masks. Stuff like that, I think can make things be a little bit more difficult. And I don't know, it kind of, to your point, they naturally go together. Um, and I'm kind of glad to see recently, in the past 10 years or so, I think that understanding has become um, more concrete as far as bringing those things together compared to I just work in infosec or I just work in cyber, and then you got your engineers and your operations folks over there, and this is their responsibility, and IT and ops folks, what do they care about any type of cybersecurity stuff. I think as we've kind of levied more responsibilities and requirements, especially from like a compliance standpoint, I think that's kind of put the onus a little bit back on the IT teams, because you're trying to maintain your patching, and so at least you're integrated with that. You're having your communications, you're understanding, you know the differences between critical vulnerabilities, high vulnerabilities, medium vulnerabilities, and hopefully working with your cyber security teams to come up with mitigations and things like that when patches don't work. So I think there's a whole bunch of ways that there's starting to be a lot more synergies, and I think that's a good thing.
Something you've mentioned in like your interview with the XSS rat and a couple of your other videos is um, how you're I guess your non quote unquote cybersecurity team, like your non discrete blue teamer folks that are on the networking side, how they are still kind of really part of the blue team, and how
Oh, for
it's
sure.
everybody's job, it's
Yep.
everyone's job in the organization. What are some ways that we in cybersecurity can, I guess, improve our message, amplify it a bit, so people that aren't even in the IT world, period, really get to know and understand their role, even though it's not quite as technical if they're not in the networking IT or like the IT cybersecurity
Yeah.
world, it's
Yeah.
still just as important.
Yeah, I mean, I think at that point it all just comes back to communication and also levying expectations, right? And if those expectations are never explained and explained in a way where folks understand what the impact is for not being a part of the group, not feeding inputs into things, not reporting things, not looking for ways to work together, then that's obviously going to cause a lot of issues. So I think trying to bring people together to understand, it's not supposed to be a contentious type of relationship. Everybody's working towards the same goal. The flip side of that on the cyber side and the infosec side is, I think, trying to get those folks to understand that their role is still not just to protect the data or protect the environment. Their role is actually to enable whatever the mission is of that company or that organization. And they're doing that by providing guidance on how to keep things safe, right? But still, the point is to get whatever work done that the company or the organization is doing, and that's the primary point that everybody should be working towards. So I think kind of coming at it from that approach and getting people to see that maybe what their initial thought is of what their responsibility is, or that their only responsibility is, actually encompasses more things. You know, I think on the IT side, it's kind of the flip of that. Like they're like, yeah, you know, uptime, keep everything moving. Security is an impediment. They don't want to, you know, allow us to do these things. And, you know, getting those folks to realize, well, actually, you know, part of it is, you know, yes, the mission and getting the work done. The other part is building and maintaining safe and secure systems, right? So it's kind of this symbiotic relationship that both things need to be kind of fed, and I don't know, maybe the mindset adjusted a little bit to get everybody pulling in the same direction.
Yeah, gotcha. That's, I mean, great stuff. So, and to kind of tie this into your time in the Air Force, you know, and I guess this kind of depends on, you know, specifically the shop you're working on and who, you know, the people around you. And I don't know, you know, I'm sure everybody was probably more technical on the Air Force side. With like the Army in like a command, you'll have like your S6, who's your signals officer, and they'll have to like report just directly to the commander their requirements, their needs,
Mhm.
and stuff like that. And especially if the, you know, your commander isn't from like an IT background,
Yeah.
you know, if they're from like a combat arms background, that translation might be kind of more difficult, especially if you have to do it in a timely manner.
Yeah.
Uh, how did your time in the Air Force kind of help, uh, I guess, nurture your ability to communicate with non-technical people and technical people, and bridge that gap?
Sure. So I mean that is definitely always an issue. I will say though that I didn't actually run into that being as much of a situation in my local command. Pretty much all of the officers that I had to report to, and when I was working in the Air Force One VIP or the VIP fleet stuff, that was actually interesting because as a E4 and E3 for a little bit, um, I was directly reporting daily to an O5, like stand up meeting every day, go in there. Yep. Okay. You know, Air Force One's flying here today. These are the comm issues that we have. Okay. Air Force Two's flying here today. These are the comm issues that we have, stuff like that. So, that coupled with also the reporting requirements that we had, which pretty much went up to a whole bunch of flag officers and stuff like that, made me get very good at well, written communication for one, because your ass would get grilled if there was any issues with any type of reporting that you were doing, if it wasn't pretty much perfect. I mean, it had to be perfect, right? So I mean, you're writing emails that are being you know, double checked by other people before you're sending them off, which was interesting because the office itself was very, very small at that time, and it was just, you know, me and a contractor on shift, right? Over time it kind of expanded a little bit and we got some more folks in there, but yeah, attention to detail with the communication was very, very important. um, and I think even when talking to folks that are technical, just because they're technical, that doesn't necessarily mean that they have the requisite background in the specifics of the scenario that you're talking about, right? So, um, in that case, you still have to kind of break things down in a way that's understandable. Even like, okay, yeah, they understand, you know, data communications and stuff like that, but they might not necessarily understand the specifics of the data flows of your particular system or solution that you're supporting, right? So you still have to break things down in a way where yes, they can understand it, and if you do a good enough job with that, then you know, folks who might not have that same technical background it's still, you know, understandable. Is I think if you're breaking it down in a way where you're talking about um, impact and effect, I think goes a long way, especially when it's not just the talking about the technical effect, but really what the mission impact is out of things. So
Gotcha. Yeah. To kind of shift topics just a little bit, you had a video that I thought was really cool where you build a secure network with your kids.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, I thought that was a really cool idea. What or how important do you think it is to start educating kids at a younger age just about networking, about kind of the IT concepts, and about cybersecurity concepts, especially because I mean, like I grew up with the internet, so it's like it's gonna be around you anyway. May as well, kind of be familiar with that.
Yeah. No, exactly. I mean, everything at this point is going to have like an IP address on it. So, uh, as much as you might try to fight that, and that's kind of like a funny thing for me, like, and some people joke with me about this, but you would think being in tech, I would fully embrace all things tech, and I don't. You know, it's like I work with it all day, and then it's like, man, I don't want any of that Alexa or you know, like any of that stuff in the house. I'm like, nah, we're good. No smart fridges or anything like that. Um, but yeah, I think when it comes to kids, since everything they're doing is going to be revolving around that, I mean, we kind of have certain things that you want to instill in kids from a safety perspective, and cybersecurity just has to be another one of those things that you need to be aware of and talk to them about, both from a technology standpoint, right? Like, yeah, you don't want to go and click on links and download things from, you know, places that look shady and, you know, that type of stuff. But then also from like a people perspective, as far as, you know, being aware of who you're talking to, being aware of the information that you're sharing, you know, that type of stuff as well. So I think it's very important. And honestly, not only for kids, because there's a lot of people who, you know, might not be street smart when it comes to those types of things, right? So, you know, the same type of conversations that you would have with your kids, you probably would have with like your grandmother. So,
Right. I definitely feel you on the IoT thing. Like
yeah,
I have like I think I have like two little like Alexa pods.
yeah,
They're I mean, they're in a bag. They're not plugged
yeah. I
in.
actually hold on one second because this is kind of funny. I think I have one. Oh, yeah. So somebody gave me this for Christmas 2 years ago, and this thing has not been opened. And when I first got it, I was like, you know, I should go on Google and try and find some like simple Amazon Echo hacks and just like make some YouTube videos out of it or something like that. And I just haven't had the time to get back to do that. But that is probably about the only way that I would ever end up turning that on.
See, that's probably going to be a really cool collector's item in like 50 years. It's like, hey, do you want to see a mint condition
Right.
Amazon Alexa?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
It's like they rule the world. Why would I want to see one?
Yeah.
Like,
It's like,
and
yeah, these are what enabled Skynet. So
right, yeah. Amazon Skynet coming
yeah.
soon. And I've thought about the same thing with, using them in like a home lab and just kind of goofing around with them.
Yeah.
But I feel like, I mean, what makes me a bit nervous about it is that's how I've accumulated IT stuff.
Hmm.
It's like I'm gonna want to use this at some point, and it just kind of sits there for a while.
For sure. Yeah.
And at some point, I'm gonna need to, sift back through. But and especially with the big security camera hack that just got announced this last week, you know, IoT devices, that's an interesting topic in cybersecurity, and tying that back to, spreading the message, not just to people of a younger age, but people of an older age and just non-technical people, how important it is to secure IoT devices. Because, I mean, like you said, everything has an IP address, and that may not be a connection that people that aren't in, the IT world
Yep.
would probably think of at first. They'd be like, I'm
Yep.
about to get Grubhub with my voice, not necessarily this could be hacked.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So how can we, I guess, tailor a message that is just for them, that you know it can, I want to say is trendy, but can definitely get the message out there that security with IoT devices is incredibly important.
Yeah. Um, that's a really good question, and I don't know that I have a really good answer for it because we still have issues with just getting folks to like patch their PCs, right? So these things, I mean, like, okay, the Amazon dot here, maybe that is good from a patching perspective. Like maybe Amazon will stay up on all this stuff, but within the marketplace, we have so many different types of devices. And I mean, I'm pretty pessimistic about the fact of all of these different companies continuing to update their software that's running on them to keep them, you know, secure in some type of manner, outside of the fact of, yeah, okay, we make sure that we change the default credentials to get into it, and your other basic hygiene stuff. I just don't know that the companies that are making these things are going to be able to keep up with patching whatever vulnerabilities end up coming out, because they're probably just using or reusing code that's super old. Especially you're talking just, you go on Amazon and just find some random company that has some type of, I don't know, a waffle iron that is able to give you your information from weather.com or something like that. How often is KitchenAid really looking at updating their software on their devices and stuff like that? So I don't know. I think that's going to be a really, really tough challenge. I think that the awareness aspect of stuff is really, really important. But I think probably the answer with that type of stuff might end up coming down to being more of a technical answer at some point with some other types of protection mechanisms.
Yeah, and you bring up a really good point about patching, and we've seen that with, I mean, to tie it into another hack, because 2021 has been insane, is like that exchange hack. I
Yeah,
mean, people are still running, very old versions, well, relative to the IT world, very
sure.
old versions of Exchange.
Yep.
Uh, and that, it's so, and my next question is probably going to be about updates and patches and compatibility, because this is something that I've been kind of wondering about myself, is like what companies and organizations that are worried about updates and patches because it could cause configuration issues.
Hmm.
Obviously there's a balance where you have to at some point implement patches and upgrades,
Sure. Yeah.
because it's just, either for compliance or just because of there are obvious vulnerabilities,
Right. Yeah.
but there are also, business altering compatibility issues that are kind of holding things back. There's only so much vendor support that can be done, on the
Sure.
vendor side.
Yep.
So I guess what other options, if there are any, I mean, maybe there aren't, what other options do organizations have to, I mean, just kind of either speed up the patching and upgrade process, and avoid those, uh, integration issues,
Sure.
you know, are there any strategies that you have in mind?
Well, I mean, I think there's a few different ways to kind of attack that, and it all depends upon, in some ways, is the threat or concern with uh, operational impact actually a valid one, or is it one of just the unknown, right? Because you definitely could get in, there's places like that where they're just, you know, uh, averse to installing patches because they're like, this thing's working and we don't want to do that. So I think having some type of test environment or a string of devices within your environment, if you don't have a completely separate testing environment, to be able to at least show what the impact is with upgrading software and patches and things like that is really, really important. That also means that there needs to be a shift in the importance or priority of actually doing that. Because if that doesn't exist in your organization, then obviously that's not as much of a priority. So I think that you can kind of get a lot of benefit from having that type of environment to be able to do that. So then you really do know if you really are going to have an issue with doing those types of patching or not. And you may or you may not, but at least you'll know, compared to just throwing your hands and be like, oh yeah, no, we're not implementing that. That's going to do bad things, but you're not actually tying it back to any real data, right? The other thing, kind of with a lot of these, in some cases, is they often, even though they might be very advanced technical hacks, I guess, for a lack of a better term, sometimes the protections that we can have to limit or keep them from happening are very, very simple, and might be very simple hygiene things within our environment that we don't do. A simple one, SolarWinds, is, okay, we have a nation state that is able to do a supply chain attack, right? I mean, obviously that takes years of planning and a lot of things to go right to get to that point where you're able to do that, and then it's able to go, really, really far and do a lot of things. If you're in an environment and you have SolarWinds, and you made sure that your SolarWinds server doesn't have access to the internet, nothing would have happened to you, right? So why would your SolarWinds server need access to the internet? Do you have a good justification for that? Maybe your justification is, oh, well, we wanted to pull down patches from SolarWinds. Okay, well, why don't you have access controls that allow your SolarWinds server to only communicate back to the SolarWinds domain? I mean, that might be a reasonable halfway point between no internet access and access to everything with no real justification, right? So I think not to oversimplify things, but there are cases and things like that where if we focus on ensuring that the simple and hygiene things are taken care of, it limits our risk surface quite a bit. So that's me on my soapbox about basic network hygiene.
Oh, that's good. And I mean, I feel like there's so much to pull from that. Uh, I feel like one of the ways that would really help the industry as a whole is tackling the talent shortage, because I mean, especially in cybersecurity, there's a huge talent shortage. I don't know about IT as a whole, but as we said, as we like established at the beginning, like they tie into each other.
Yeah,
And so, I mean, I kind of want to tie it back into, I mean, educating kids, because I mean, I feel like that's a great way long term,
sure.
to decrease that talent shortage. You know, what do you think, or do you think there's a way to incorporate like IT and cybersecurity education into grade school, or and what do you think that those ways are?
Yeah, I mean, I think getting kids involved in those types of things from the start in school and stuff like that would be great. I think, I know that there's programs now where they're able to get certifications, you know, based off of the different courses that they're taking within their high schools, which I think is awesome. And that definitely will give them, you know, uh, set them ahead a bit compared to other folks once they go to get out and start looking at either going to college or getting internships or actually getting jobs in the career field. Um, as far as the talent shortage goes, I don't really know. I hear that a lot, and I don't really know necessarily what it means. So I don't know if the talent shortage is like if it's real, if it's tied back to specific roles that we're missing and we're looking for, or if it's just a, I don't know, like a blanket statement of cybersecurity is important and we know that we need to focus more on it in the future. And so that's kind of where there's kind of, I'm trying to think of the word I want to use. Um, we're trying to put a greater importance on it, and we know that that's going to take having more people. And so that's kind of where that is derivative from, right? Um, so yeah, I don't know. I think it's important to get kids involved, get them the education. I think to your point, as we get more cybersecurity um, roles and technology increases, and we end up relying on these things more and more and more, uh, getting those kids on the right path definitely will help have more people that are available for those types of roles.
Yeah, I feel like on the talent shortage, I mean, I keep hearing it too. I feel like I kind of intuitively have an idea on what it means, and that's something I've kind of been thinking a lot about is, you know, well, I guess I never even stopped to consider whether it doesn't exist. That's probably a pretty good fundamental place to start, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, so, and I don't know if it's tied back to government work, right? So, is it, we have a lot of positions for cleared folks, and we don't have enough cleared folks to do those roles, and then that kind of gets spread into a statement of, um, we have a talent shortage. Um, I don't necessarily. I mean, I'm on the timeline on Twitter all the time. There's tons of people looking for cybersecurity roles and stuff like that. So is it, we have a cybersecurity shortage of mid to senior level folks and not junior folks. We have a lot of people that want to get in, but really we need more mid to senior level or cyber architects to implement better security and cybersecurity programs in general. That might be it. I just don't know. I hear it and I don't know what the specifics are when people say it.
I want to double back on your point about needing people in government, but they have to have the clearance. But
Yeah.
before that, because that is an interesting discussion. But
Yeah.
before that, like, and maybe this is just because like my personal Twitter feed is a mixture of like cybersecurity stuff, but it's also a whole lot of Chiefs. So I don't get like the biggest
Yeah,
reading.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And then like for like my StudioSec account, like it's still relatively new.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
it's still in its infancy here. So, as far as like that pulse goes, I'm still kind of trying to get a reading.
Mm.
I feel like what I see a lot of is people wanting the offensive security side, but I'm not sure how large of the pie that actually makes up. If it's mostly blue team and just a
Most
subset of
most definitely.
offensive. Yeah.
And it's interesting because I actually get the opposite of that. It's more people that want, at least from my interactions and stuff like that, want to get into cybersecurity and kind of are looking at going the help desk route to get basic IT fundamentals and knowledge and experience, and then move over into blue team type of stuff. I don't have any data to back this up at all, but my qualitative assessment on it is there is much more work on the infosec, GRC, and blue team side than on the red team side. Um, just because the amount of companies that actually have on staff red team folks is, I wouldn't even want to put a percentage on it, but I'm sure it's incredibly small. And then you have companies that specialize in red team activities. How often is that really? I mean, so a company might hire folks out maybe once a year to come out and do some type of assessment. How many companies are actually doing that? I would assume also that's probably a pretty small percentage as well, especially when you're looking at the small to medium sized businesses. It's probably null. And then your more likely dealing with larger companies that probably have some type of governance requirement, depending upon the industry that they're in, to have some type of, pen test or red team or something like that. That being said, I still think that the red team side of stuff is definitely one of those things where if you develop the skills for it, you would definitely find a role. Because that is definitely growing, even if it's small, right? The importance of that is definitely something that's continuing to expand. So yeah, I think that's probably.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point at the end, is just that it could expand. I feel like, especially with this industry in particular, it's evolved pretty rapidly, and it will probably continue to evolve pretty rapidly.
Most definitely.
And it's that evolution pace is really governed by technology that's out, different things that are in the environment. Um, but one of the things you mentioned, and you actually had a video about this that I thought was really good, was about the importance of that pathway starting through the help desk and then kind of getting into security that way. Do you mind just expanding a little bit about that? Because I think that's really not only an excellent, pipeline,
Yeah,
but it's an important one because it sets that foundation of, here's what, probably your first line of defense for most incidents will be someone in the help desk.
sure.
Like, they'll encounter a case and they'll be like, hey, this is probably an incident. So being able to see that in the real world and then being on the security side, that would help with
Yep.
that.
Yeah, so I think that it's one viable path. I don't like just, telling folks that's the only way for you to do it. I think because sometimes people will get in there and then they just get stuck there. And that's definitely not what I'm recommending or anything like that. I don't want somebody to get into a job that their, end desire is to get into cybersecurity, and then they just get stuck, activating accounts and stuff like that, and aren't able to, move on to something else. But I think it's an avenue that provides a lot of opportunity. To your point, you're going to see a lot of stuff, and if you keep, I say this to a lot of folks, if you keep a kind of cybersecurity lens the whole time you're doing that, looking through the, service desk things that you're doing, but looking at it from the perspective of, okay, what is potential issues here from a technology standpoint? What's potential issues here from a process standpoint? What are ways that we could improve our configurations, whether it's, from a GPO standpoint, from a whatever end user applications are. I think if you kind of go into it with that mindset and also make that, if, well, I was going to say, make that known to other people in the organization that you're willing to help out with additional things like that. That could be beneficial. I mean, sometimes you do get into places that are very, very siloed, and they don't like people trying to help out with other things because they feel like, oh, that means that person's just trying to get off the help desk real quick. Excuse me. So you kind of need to gauge that, and that kind of sucks if you're in a situation like that. So I have a lot of for sympathy for folks who end up in jobs like that, because really it should all be about gaining your skills to be able to move on to whatever the next role is that's going to progress your career. And I think if you work in an organization, team that's like that, then everybody kind of succeeds and does better. What else was I saying with that? I lost my train of thought. The if it's not necessarily through the help desk, though, starting off in other types of admin fields, I think is a good thing as well. I mean, so maybe you're going to start off as a sysadmin, and sometimes those reside at the help desk. Sometimes they don't, right? Sometimes those actual specific careers might actually fall underneath a engineering team, even though they're not engineers. But the whole point is getting hands-on operational experience in an environment is going to provide you with better perspective when it comes to protecting or defending an environment. So I think that's kind of the thing that I would recommend to folks is trying to get that experience first, just because I think that it's going to make them a better blue teamer, a better defender, a better analyst. Um, I think if you just try to jump into it, like let's say you go and you get your security plus, and then excuse me, and then you go and you try and get your what is it, the CYSA plus? I think that's like the cyber analyst cert from CompTIA. But you have no operational experience. I think that it's probably going to put you at quite a disadvantage when it comes to kind of some things that might be intuitive to folks who've actually had hands-on experience in an environment.
Gotcha. Yeah. Um, to kind of go back on the question about uh, the security clearances and kind of that talent shortage, just kind of before we run out of time. This is, I don't know, I feel like it can be, it's a challenging issue, but I'm kind of wanting to get your thoughts on what are ways that people who are watching that might be in high school that are kind of looking at different career opportunities in the future, maybe people that are in college that are also kind of looking in that direction,
Mm-hmm.
that they can prepare for, I mean, not only, cybersecurity and IT and whatever they'd be doing functionally, but the security clearance process, because that's totally different. It's interesting, especially if you're very much not familiar with that process.
Yeah. Keep out of trouble. I mean, like, um, I don't know. I mean,
Don't join a
that's
Russian hacker gang.
right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, don't try to blow anything up. Um, I don't know. I mean, yeah, having the foresight to be aware of the things that could potentially cause issues, um, is kind of a challenge, especially for teenagers, I would guess. Because I mean, the folks who did end up with clearances at some point, I assume almost none of them planned on getting into a career field that required clearances, right? I've never ran into, a 14-year-old or 16-year-old who's like, yeah, I want a top secret clearance. Um, I don't know, that's tough. I mean, because you you obviously want to avoid certain types of things, but I mean, I don't know. That's a difficult question. I mean, I guess if somebody was thinking about, yeah, I want to have a career in IT, mentioning to them, whoever their mentors are, that hey, this is a potential route for you to go, and if you're going to go that route, these are some things that you want to be aware of. Um, I mean, people. I guess the thing is like kids do dumb crap all the time, and I don't know, if you get in trouble for underage drinking or you smoke some weed or something like that, that could get you in trouble. Although, I mean, I think when it comes to the security clearance process and stuff like that, there's tons of people who have done all of that and gotten in trouble. And I think the main thing with that, more so, is being honest when going through that process, because honesty is the biggest thing. Integrity is the biggest thing when doing that. And so if you lie about that stuff and then they end up finding out you lied about it, that's where you're really going to get in trouble. Not so much if, you smoked weed when you were 17, or, you smoked weed when you were 22 and you were in college, and now you're 26 and you're trying to get a job with, you know, I, I don't know, pick any government organization. You're trying to get a job with the DoD and they're going to sponsor you for clearance. I mean, I think you talk about it, you go through whatever that process is, and if everything else is lined up, I think they're pretty good at not taking incidents that aren't don't present current threats to national security, into account. So
To kind of put it on a more positive note, how rewarding can that career path be? I mean, not only coming away
sure.
with the clearance, but just the things you'll learn and the people you'll be working with.
Yeah, I mean, so I think that definitely, for different folks, depending upon, especially if they served in the military and stuff like that, that's gonna put them in some interesting positions depending on the types of missions and stuff like that that they might be supporting. Um, it definitely, I mean, in this area, right, in the DC area, I don't even know what the percentage of the IT work here that's cleared, but I would assume it is probably like half or more. So that definitely presents some great opportunities from a career stability standpoint, right? And as far as a salary standpoint, cleared work, depending upon the location, can pay a decent percentage higher than non-cleared work, unless you like live in Silicon Valley or San Francisco or something like that. Then you might be able to make more money working for one of the fangs. Um, so yeah, I think that there's a lot of positives that come from that if folks are interested in going that route. Um, at the same time, I don't want to pigeonhole people into thinking that that's the only way to be successful or make a lot of money. Uh, make a lot of money probably isn't the right term. Have a lucrative career in IT or cybersecurity. Um, definitely, that might be more the case in IT, but I think cybersecurity, since it's such a thing that, as we were talking about, is going to continue to expand and continue to be needed. Um, I don't think that will be as affected by that. So
Gotcha. We're coming kind of close to time, so just want to ask some non-technical questions.
sure.
I've seen Grogu in the background.
Oh yeah, he's
So,
back there.
what are your thoughts on season 2 of Mandalorian?
Oh, it was awesome. I loved it. My only complaint with Disney Plus with that stuff is I hate waiting week to week. Like I just wish it was like Netflix and I could just binge the whole thing and be done with it. I love season 1. Season 1 was awesome. Season 2 was even better. Um, it's going to be interesting to see how the storyline will continue to evolve without him being around, whether or not it's just going to be like following Mando doing other things, or if it's going to be split and we're going to get some like, Grogu training sessions and stuff like that. Um, yeah, I don't know. I'm excited for that. I think the Book of Fett is going to be pretty cool. Looking forward to seeing what they kind of do with that. And then I think they have, I don't know, they have like a bunch of other, the Kenobi series is going to be coming out. I think they were filming that like around Christmas time. So
That
I'm
one's
not sure
with
if that.
Ewan McGregor
Yeah,
and
yeah,
and Hayden Christensen.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah. It's gonna be really cool. I don't know if it comes out in 2021 or if they're putting it in 2022, but that will be good. The Ahsoka series should be really great. I thought Rosario Dawson did awesome as Ahsoka. So that was really, really cool to see that. I think they're doing like another, is it a show or a movie that is dealing with like a little bit before Rogue One? It might be a movie. I think what's his name? The main male character in Rogue One. Um,
Yes, I know what. Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's about him, the spy, the
yeah, yeah,
rebel spy guy.
yeah, yeah.
Yep.
So I
Yeah,
think I
that'll be
think
good.
they're making a movie on that, kind of like of his misadventures or whatever. Um, so yeah, I think a lot of good stuff that they're going to try make up for the last 3 movies.
I was about to say they got to try to. I mean, they really have to work to reunite everybody.
Yeah.
After
I mean, they could just completely like retcon it and just be like, yeah, Mandalorian is like the real timeline here. Everything else was a dream or something. Who knows? But I think Jon Favreau does an awesome job, and what is it? Dave Filoni as well, I think, is who works with him on that, to really staying true to the type of storylines that people want to see. And they do a lot of fan service that comes off as really good, right? Like they do a good job with their Easter eggs and stuff like that. So yeah, I love it. I look forward to whatever other stuff that they're putting out, for sure.
I really like the Easter egg, and I guess it's still technically no spoilers, but when they were, well, never mind. That's to try to tease people to watch it. But sure. Operation Cinder. I like the Operation Cinder Easter egg.
Yeah.
I thought that was good. So where can people find and follow you? And then do you offer any like mentorship courses?
So you can find me on Twitter, jbizzle703. And then YouTube, CYBERINSIGHT. And no, I don't offer any mentorship. You just tag me on the timeline and I'll answer stuff. I kind of feel, I don't know. So since I own my own company and, I do business to business type of work, I kind of feel like, all this other stuff that I do on YouTube and on Twitter is kind of my way of being able to give back. So I feel torn with having a service and charging folks to answer questions. The flip side of that is I don't have time to rewrite your resume and do all that type of stuff, which I wish I did, to help folks out and stuff like that, but it's just not, don't have the ability to do that, because that's actually a lot of work, to do that type of stuff, and or getting on phone calls with folks and coaching them, through a whole bunch of stuff that would take a lot of effort, and that would probably be something that you should pay somebody for. But if they have, questions that are, they just don't know the answers, or they're trying to get other data points and stuff like that, I'm always happy to, provide my perspective or share some resources or point them towards some other folks who might be able to, get them the information that they're looking for. I do have a book that I wrote. It's a Network Plus study guide that's on Amazon. And then that book actually correlates to I won't call it a boot camp, but it is actually a Network Plus class that's offered through Standard User Institute. That's actually an accredited class. You actually get 3 college credits for it. And it's offered through a few different online universities, or you can take it self-paced as well. So that's kind of cool. But yeah, that's kind of the gist of where to find me.
Sweet. And I'll be including some links to all of those down in the description as well. It. So, dude, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. This has been awesome.
Definitely. Yeah, it was awesome to finally get to chat with you.
Wow, what an awesome interview. Thank you again, John Breath, for your time. I really appreciate it. And thank you, everybody watching this video, for your time as well. I really hope that this was helpful and informative for you. And if it was, hey, hit that like button, comment down below with your thoughts, and subscribe for more content I'm posting every week. Do not forget to follow him on Twitter and YouTube. Again, his YouTube channel is CyberInsight. His Twitter is John Breath. He's, a pretty remarkable guy. Again, like I said with XSS Rad, to be the best, you got to learn from the best. And he's one of the best. So definitely give him a follow and learn what you can from him. So with that, we'll see you next time.